The first time I realized my mother's new husband might be dangerous, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten me. He didn't slam his fist on the table or grab my arm. He simply waited until my mother left the kitchen, set his wine glass on the counter, and smiled at me. "Your mother is finally happy, Emma." "I know. Do you?" Something about the way Robert said it made me stop. He was 64 years old, silver-haired, well-dressed, and naturally charming. He had the kind of voice that made even criticism sound reasonable. 6 months earlier, I had liked him. Maybe that was what bothered me most. "I think you're asking too many questions," he said. "About what?" "Money. Accounts. Helen's investments. She's my mother. And she's my wife." His smile remained, but his eyes changed. "Those are two very different things." I folded my arms. "What exactly are you trying to tell me, Robert?" He stepped closer. Not enough for me to accuse him of intimidating me. Just enough to make the movement deliberate. "Your mother spent years alone after your father died." "I know. She finally has someone taking care of her. Mom was taking care of herself before she met you." For a second, his smile disappeared. Then it returned. "Of course she was." He picked up his glass. "But she doesn't have to anymore." I didn't like that sentence. Before I could answer, I heard my mother's footsteps approaching. Robert lowered his voice. "Don't make the mistake of interfering with her happiness." I stared at him. "Is that a warning?" His smile widened slightly. "Take it however you want." Then my mother walked back into the kitchen carrying a lemon cake. "There you are." Helen Carter looked happier than I'd seen her in years. That was the hardest part. She didn't look frightened. She wasn't asking me for help. She was smiling. "What are you two talking about?" Robert looked at me. Then he slipped his arm around my mother's waist. "Nothing important. I wish I could tell you I exposed him that night. I didn't. I wish I could tell you my mother believed me when I finally showed her what I'd found. She didn't. And I wish I could tell you Robert was simply a controlling husband who changed after marriage. The truth was more complicated. Because Robert hadn't met my mother by accident. Before he ever introduced himself, he knew she was a widow. He knew she lived alone. He knew my father had left her financially secure. And by the time I figured out why that mattered, my mother had already given him access to almost every important part of her life. My name is Emma Carter. I was 36 when Robert Hayes entered our family. My father, Daniel, had died 4 years earlier. Dad was 60 when he suffered a massive heart attack. There was no warning. No long illness. No time for goodbyes. One Saturday afternoon, he was standing in the backyard complaining about our old lawn mower. By Sunday morning, he was gone. My parents had been married for 37 years. They weren't a glamorous couple. They didn't post romantic messages online, or take expensive anniversary vacations. Dad rarely bought flowers. He said paying $60 for something that died in a week was bad financial planning. Instead, every spring he bought Mom another rose bush. By the time he died, there were 11 of them along the back fence. Every morning, Dad made coffee. Every Friday, they ordered Chinese food. Every Sunday, Mom complained that he watched too much football. Every Monday, she asked him who won. That was their marriage. Thousands of ordinary moments repeated for decades. After Dad died, the ordinary moments disappeared. For the first few months, Mom couldn't even sleep in their bedroom. She slept on the sofa with the television on. When I asked why, she said, "The house is too quiet." I started visiting almost every day. I lived about 40 minutes away and worked as a financial fraud analyst for a regional bank. My job wasn't exciting. I didn't chase criminals. I didn't carry a badge. Most days, I sat in front of 2 computer screens looking at numbers until something stopped making sense. A changed mailing address. An unusual transfer. A new authorized user. A customer who suddenly stopped receiving paper statements. A transaction that was perfectly legal but completely different from everything the person had done before. My job had taught me something important. Big problems often begin quietly. Fraud rarely starts with an empty bank account. Sometimes it starts with someone saying, "Let me take care of that for you." At the time, though, I wasn't thinking about fraud. I was worried about loneliness. For almost 3 years after Dad died, Mom barely dated. Her friend Carol tried to set her up once with a widower from church. Mom figured it out before the appetizers arrived. She called me afterward. "I am not a rescue dog, Emma." I laughed. Rescue dogs are very popular. That's not the point. Was he nice? He spent 20 minutes explaining his cholesterol. Romantic. She laughed. I missed that laugh. Mom had spent nearly 4 decades as half of a couple. Suddenly, she ate breakfast alone. She grocery shopped for one. She watched television alone. She woke up alone. She had friends. She had money. She had me. But none of those things replaced the person she'd shared 37 years with. Then came the charity gala. Carol had bought 2 tickets for a fundraiser supporting the local children's hospital. Mom almost canceled. Carol refused to let her. That night, Mom wore a dark blue dress I hadn't seen since Dad's retirement dinner. She later told me she'd stood in front of the mirror for 15 minutes wondering if she looked ridiculous. Then she told herself something. Daniel is dead, Helen. You are not. So she went. That's where she met Robert. Or at least, that's what we believed. According to Mom, she was standing beside the silent auction table when she reached for a pen. At exactly the same moment, Robert reached for it too. The same pen, Emma. She told me the story the next morning. What are the chances? Pretty good if there was only one. There were 6. Okay. That's slightly romantic. He apologized and gave it to me. A gentleman. Then 20 minutes later, he asked if I wanted coffee. And? I said no. I smiled. Good. Then he asked again later. And? I said yes. She tried to hide her smile. She couldn't. I hadn't seen that expression since Dad died. So when she asked if I wanted to meet Robert, I said yes. The first dinner went almost too well. Robert arrived early. When I walked into the restaurant, he stood. Emma. Not you must be Emma. He already knew my name. Of course he did. Mom had told him about me. I'm glad to finally meet you. He shook my hand. Mom looked nervous. Later, I understood why. She wanted me to like him. Robert made that easy. He asked about my job. When I told him I worked in financial fraud, he didn't make a joke about catching criminals. Instead, he asked, what makes a transaction suspicious? Context. What do you mean? Something can be completely legal but unusual for that particular customer. He nodded. So, behavior matters. Exactly. He seemed genuinely interested. That was Robert's gift. He listened. Not the way people listen while waiting for their turn to talk. He remembered things. Mom mentioned once that she liked lemon in her water. The next time we went out, Robert ordered water with lemon before she asked. He remembered Dad's name. He never acted uncomfortable when Mom talked about him. What did Daniel do? Electrical contractor. Did he own the company? For 24 years. What kind of fishing did he like? Anything that gave him an excuse to buy equipment. Mom laughed. Robert smiled. Later, she told me. That's what I like about him. What? He doesn't act like your father is competition. That mattered. Robert said he'd been married before. A woman named Elaine had died after an illness. He didn't say much more. We didn't ask. He owned a consulting company. He traveled occasionally. He dressed well, but wasn't flashy. He drove a nice car but never mentioned the price. He didn't brag about money. If anything, he seemed almost modest. 2 months later, Mom called me after a date. He bought me a plant. A plant? An orchid. That's dangerous. Why? Now you have to keep it alive. He said flowers die. I went quiet. Dad used to say that. Mom noticed. Emma? I'm here. Is this weird for you? No. Be honest. I thought about it. A little. I understand. But that's my issue. Not yours. She thanked me. I meant it. 3 months after they met, Robert proposed. That was the first time I became seriously uncomfortable. 3 months? Mom held out her hand. The ring was elegant. Not enormous. Exactly something she would choose. I'm 62, Emma. What does that have to do with anything? I'm not 25. That's exactly why you should know 3 months is fast. She lowered her hand. I knew your father for 4 months before he proposed. That was 1982. And? People still had phone cords. She laughed. I'm serious. Suomi. She sat beside me. I loved your father. I know. I will always love him. Her eyes filled. But I'm still here. That sentence silenced me. I could live another 20 years. Hopefully more. Do you want me spending them waiting for everyone else to decide when I'm allowed to be happy again? No. Then trust me. I hugged her. If you're happy, I'm happy. At the time, I meant every word. Helen and Robert married 4 months later. It was a small ceremony. 42 guests. Mom wore palais bleu. When she walked down the aisle, Robert cried. I cried too. During the reception, Robert found me near the bar. Thank you. For what? Trusting me with her. I smiled. She's not mine to give. He laughed. Good answer. Then he became serious. I know I'll never replace your father. I wouldn't expect you to. I just want Helen to feel safe. At the time, I thought that was beautiful. Later, I would remember those exact words. For the first 2 months, marriage seemed good for Mom. She and Robert took a short trip to Charleston. He built raised garden beds in the backyard. He learned Dad's chili recipe because Mom mentioned missing it. He sent me a photograph of his first attempt. Your mother says this is terrible. I blame Daniel. I replied. Dad would agree. Nothing seemed wrong. Then Carol called. Have you talked to your mother? Yesterday. Is she angry with me? Why? She canceled lunch again. They're newlyweds. For 5 months? I laughed. Carol didn't. We've had lunch every Wednesday for 28 years. That stopped me. Maybe Robert planned something. He didn't. How do you know? She said Robert thinks she spends too much time running around. Running around? Her words. That didn't sound like Mom. I called her that evening. Carol thinks you're avoiding her. Oh, she's dramatic. You haven't had lunch in 6 weeks. We've been busy. Doing what? Things. Mom. She laughed. Robert thinks I was overscheduling myself. Do you? Silence. Then? Maybe. I let it go. A week later, Carol called again. She quit book club. That surprised me more. Mom had belonged to the same book club for 17 years. Why? Robert says she doesn't even read the books. She doesn't. That's not why we go. Fair point. When I asked Mom, she brushed it off. It's just book club. Exactly. You loved it. I can go back anytime. Then why quit? Robert and I want more evenings together. Reasonable. Everything was reasonable. That's what made it difficult. Then Mom's car disappeared. Where's the Honda? Robert took it in. For what? He thinks the transmission is slipping. Did you notice anything? No. Robert entered the room. It hesitates between second and third. Mom smiled. He notices everything. The Honda stayed at the dealership for almost 3 weeks. Then Robert suggested selling it. We don't need 2 cars, Mom said. What happens when he travels? I'll use a ride service. You hate ride services. I'm learning. Again, reasonable. Then I noticed something else. Mom stopped answering her phone as often. Instead, Robert answered. Emma. Hey. Is Mom there? She's in the garden. I'll call later. I can get her. Nah, it's fine. The next time. She's showering. Another time. She's resting. None of those calls meant anything. But over time, I realized I was speaking to Robert almost as often as I was speaking to Mom. Then came the mail. I was helping Mom reorganize the study when I found unopened bank statements. Mom, these are 3 months old. Oh. She barely looked. Robert changed everything to paperless. You hate paperless. Apparently I'm joining the 21st century. Do you have the login? She gave me a look. Of course. What's the password? I'm not giving you my banking password. I don't want it. I'm asking if you know it. She stopped. I think Robert wrote it down. That bothered me. But I said nothing. A week later, I asked about Dad's investment account. Dad had spent 34 years as an electrical contractor. For the last 24, he owned his own small business. He wasn't wealthy, but he was careful. After he died, Mom inherited the paid-off house, retirement savings, investments, and life insurance. Altogether, including the home, she had assets worth around $1.8 million. She would never be rich enough to stop thinking about money entirely. But she would never have to worry about groceries or electricity bills. Dad had one Vanguard account he managed himself. Mom called it Daniel's account. One Sunday at dinner, I asked, "Did you ever move Dad's Vanguard account?" She looked up. Which one? The investment account. Oh. Robert consolidated it. Me forks upped. Where? I don't remember. Robert walked in carrying coffee. What's going on? Emma is interrogating me. Mom laughed. Robert didn't. About? Dad's account. Robert handed her coffee. I moved it into a more efficient portfolio. Which institution? He named a reputable investment firm. Whose names are on it? Robert looked at me. Excuse me? The account. Mine and Helen's. Why yours? Mom frowned. Emma. I'm asking. Robert smiled. We're married. So, married people combine finances. Some do. Your parents did. He was right. That irritated me even more. Mom touched my arm. I approved everything. Did you read the documents? Her expression changed. Only slightly. Robert explained them. That wasn't what I'd asked. After dinner, Mom went upstairs to get dessert. Robert and I were alone. That's when he gave me the warning. Your mother is finally happy. And don't make the mistake of interfering. Driving home, I replayed every word. Was it a threat? Or was Robert simply frustrated with an adult daughter questioning her mother's marriage? For the first time, I wondered whether I was the problem. So I backed off. For almost a month. Then a case landed on my desk at work. It had nothing to do with Mom. A 71-year-old widow had added a new partner to several accounts. Over 18 months, he'd gradually taken over her bills, investments, and correspondence. My colleague Jenna leaned over my desk. Classic dependency pattern. What? He makes himself necessary first. I looked at her. She pointed at the file. Driving. Bills. Passwords. Appointments. He doesn't steal anything initially. Then what? He helps. I stared at the timeline. And eventually, she can't do anything without him. My mother's Honda flashed into my mind. Then the passwords. The paperless statements. Carol. Book club. Dad's investment account. He makes himself necessary. That evening, I searched Robert Hayes. I didn't use anything from work. I couldn't, and I wouldn't. I used public records anyone could access. Robert Hayes. 64. Business consultant. Several corporate registrations. A few property records. Nothing alarming. Then I found an old address. Associated name. Susan Miller Hayes. Robert had told us about Elaine. He had never mentioned Susan. I searched marriage records. Robert Hayes and Susan Miller. Married 17 years earlier. Divorced 11 years earlier. Susan was alive. Maybe Elaine came later. I kept searching. Then another name appeared. Patricia Moore Hayes. Marriage. Divorce. 2 former wives. Both alive. He sat back. This didn't prove Robert was dangerous. People get divorced. People don't tell new partners every detail immediately. But Mom believed Robert had been a widower. Had he lied? Or had we assumed? I searched Susan. She had owned a bookkeeping business. 2 rental properties. She'd been 59 when she married Robert. I found a possible phone number. For 10 minutes, I stared at it. Then I called. A woman answered. Hello? Is this Susan Miller? Who's asking? My name is Emma Carter. Silence. I'm calling about Robert Hayes. The silence changed. How did you get this number? I'm sorry. I know this is strange. What do you want? Robert married my mother. Susan didn't respond. Then she asked. How old is she? 62. Does she have money? My stomach tightened. Why are you asking that? Susan exhaled. Because I did. I sat down. Susan didn't tell me Robert was a criminal. She didn't say he had stolen everything. What she described was subtler. At the beginning, he was wonderful. She had been divorced for 3 years. Her children lived in other states. Robert remembered her birthday. Brought her coffee. Helped fix things around the house. He never asked for access to her finances. He offered help. Taxes first. Then insurance. Then rental property paperwork. Then investments. He doesn't ask, Susan told me. What does he do? He offers. What's the difference? An offer makes you feel rude for refusing. That sentence stayed with me. Susan said Robert always had a reason. Better interest rate. Lower fees. Simpler taxes. Estate planning. Convenience. He made everything easier. Until I realized I couldn't do anything without him. What happened? I wanted to move one investment back into my name. And? He asked why I didn't trust him. That's it? No. Susan laughed bitterly. That's never it. Robert became hurt. Then distant. Then angry. He reminded Susan of everything he'd done for her. Eventually, she apologized. For wanting control of your own account? Yes. That sounded painfully familiar. Did he steal from you? Not exactly. What does that mean? It means he knew how to stay close to the line. Susan said she eventually divorced him. She lost money in the settlement. Not everything. But enough. Why didn't you report him? For what? Fraud. Being manipulative isn't fraud. Did he forge anything? Not that I could prove. Threaten you? Never physically. Then, why are you warning me? Susan was silent. Then, because your mother isn't his wife. I waited. She's his next retirement plan. He felt cold. Susan emailed me old correspondence. Nothing individually proved wrongdoing. Together, though, it showed a pattern. Let me simplify this. You shouldn't have to worry about money. I can handle that for you. We're married. Why keep everything separate? Same language. Same logic. Then Susan mentioned Patricia. She was before me. I found her. She won't help. Why? She defended him. That surprised me. Even after they divorced? Yes. I contacted Patricia anyway. She was 70 now. Her response arrived 3 days later. Robert was a good husband to me. Please do not contact me again. That stopped me. If Robert had a pattern, why would Patricia defend him? Maybe Susan was bitter. Maybe 2 divorces were just 2 divorces. Maybe I was creating a narrative because I had already decided I didn't trust him. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I almost deleted everything I'd found. Then I thought about the gala. Mom and Robert's famous pen. Their accidental meeting. Carol still had the event program. Of course she did. Carol kept birthday cards from 1994. She sent me photographs. Robert's consulting company wasn't listed as a sponsor. His name wasn't among major donors. I called the charity, and eventually learned that Robert had purchased his ticket only 2 days before the gala. Still not suspicious. People buy tickets late. Then Carol remembered something. I posted about it. What? The gala. When? A week before. Where? Facebook. I found the post. A photograph of Carol and Mom. Finally convinced Helen Carter to come out with me. The post was public. I looked through the reactions. Then I saw it. Robert Hayes. He had reacted to Carol's photograph 5 days before the gala. Before he supposedly met my mother. I stared at his name. Maybe he'd seen the post through the charity's page. Maybe he'd simply thought Mom looked attractive. That wasn't a crime. But the story about the pen no longer felt quite so romantic. I drove to Mom's house the next morning. Robert was out. Good. Mom opened the door wearing gardening gloves. Emma? What's wrong? We need to talk. Her face changed immediately. If this is about Robert, please. She let me in. I started with the marriage records. Who is Susan? Mom looked at the page. I don't know. She was married to Robert. Mom frowned. No. Yes. Robert's wife died. Elaine died. Susan didn't. I showed her, Patricia. Mom sat down. For the first time, she looked frightened. Why wouldn't he tell me? I don't know. Then I showed her Susan's emails. The account changes. The pattern. Finally, I showed her Carol's Facebook post. Robert saw this before the gala. Mom stared at the screen. He follows the hospital charity. I know. So he saw a photograph. Yes. That doesn't mean anything. No. By itself, it doesn't. Then why are you doing this? Because everything together worries me. Mom stood. You're investigating my husband. I'm trying to understand what's happening. Behind my back. Because when I ask questions, Robert tells me to stop interfering. She stared at me. What? I realized I'd never told her about the kitchen. He warned me. When? Last month. What did he say? I told her. Mom shook her head. That doesn't sound like Robert. He said it. You probably misunderstood. That hurt. Mom. The front door opened. Robert walked in. He saw my face. Then Mom's. Then the papers. He understood immediately. What is this? Mom held up the marriage record. Who is Susan? Robert stopped. Only for a second. Then he sighed. Emma. Not angry. Disappointed. That was Robert's greatest talent. He could turn being questioned into someone else's bad behavior. He sat beside Mom. Helen, I should have told you. She's alive. Yes. You told me your wife died. Elaine died. Who is Elaine? The woman I was with after Susan. You said your wife died. I said I'd lost someone I loved. Mom looked at me. I remembered the dinner. Had he actually used the word wife? I couldn't be certain. Robert continued. Susan was a painful marriage. And Patricia? A mistake when I was younger. Why didn't you tell me? Because neither relationship had anything to do with us. He took Mom's hand. Then he looked at me. And Emma contacted these women. I contacted Susan. Why? Because you lied. No. His voice sharpened. I chose not to drag old failures into a new marriage. Then he saw the Facebook post. He laughed. This? You saw Helen before the gala. I follow the charity. So? So I saw a photograph. Then bought a ticket 2 days later. Because I wanted to attend. And happened to reach for the same pen? Robert looked at Mom. Is this really what we're doing? Mom was crying now. Robert turned toward her. Helen, I saw your photograph. I thought you were beautiful. I hadn't expected that. He continued. I knew you'd be at the gala. So yes, maybe I hoped I'd meet you. Mom looked at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because the pen story was better. He smiled gently. For a second, even I almost believed him. Then Robert looked at the Susan documents. His expression changed. She told you I stole from her? No. Because I didn't. She said you controlled her finances. We were married. That's not an answer. No, Emma. He stood. Here's the answer. Susan hated our divorce. Patricia and I were incompatible. Elaine died. I met Helen, fell in love, and married her. Then he looked at Mom. And your daughter can't accept it. Don't. I stood. He ignored me. She asks where your money is. Because you moved it. With Helen's permission. She doesn't even know the banking password. Mom looked embarrassed. Robert saw it. Then he found the perfect weapon. Maybe this isn't about me. What? He looked at Mom. Daniel left you financially secure. Mom stared at him. Robert. And Emma has spent months asking what you're doing with the money. My stomach dropped. Don't you dare. I'm asking a reasonable question. No, you're not. He turned to Mom. Why does your daughter care so much about what you do with your own inheritance? Mom's face changed. I knew immediately what he had done. Mom. This isn't about protecting me, is it? Her voice was quiet. I couldn't believe it. Dad left that money to you. Then why can't I decide what happens to it? You can. Without reporting to you? Of course. Then stop. Robert placed a hand on her shoulder. I wanted to pull it away. Instead, Mom said. I need you to go. Mom. Please. You're asking me to leave? I need time. I gathered my papers. At the door, Mom said. You're treating me like I'm incompetent. I turned. I'm not. That's how it feels. I swallowed. I'm sorry it feels that way. That's not an apology. No. I looked at Robert. Then back at her. Because I'm not sorry for being worried. He left. For the next 3 weeks, my mother barely spoke to me. That period mattered more than anything I found in a public record. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to help her. If I called too often, Robert could say I was controlling. If I stopped calling, he got exactly what he wanted. So I sent ordinary messages. Cold tonight. Bring the orchids inside. Carol asked about you. Found Dad's old chili recipe. Apparently he really did use too much cumin. Sometimes, Mom answered. Usually 1 or 2 words. Once she sent a heart. I stared at that heart for 10 minutes. Susan emailed me. How did it go? I answered. She chose him. Susan replied. For now. I called her. I don't like those words. I know. What am I supposed to do? Nothing. That's not helpful. Actually, it is. Susan told me her sister had warned her about Robert. Susan had stopped speaking to her for almost 2 months. Why? Because every time she attacked Robert, I defended him. Even when you knew she might be right? Especially then. Why? Because if Robert was wrong, then I had made a terrible mistake. She paused. And sometimes, defending the mistake feels easier than admitting it. I thought about Mom. So what changed? Robert got impatient. What do you mean? He wanted something I wasn't ready to give him. What? Control of a property account. And? When I said no, he stopped being patient. That reminded me of Patricia, the woman who had defended Robert. A week later, she emailed me. 6 words. Can we speak without Robert knowing? We spoke the next morning. I wasn't honest with you, Patricia said. Why? Because I signed an agreement during our divorce. A confidentiality clause restricted what she could discuss about their settlement. But there were things she could say. Robert hadn't stolen from her. He'd convinced her to invest almost $400,000 into a business connected to one of his associates. The business failed. Years later, Patricia learned Robert had received consulting fees before the collapse. Did he know it would fail? I can't prove that. Why did you tell me he was a good husband? Patricia was quiet. Then, because I was ashamed. Of what? I was an attorney for 30 years. I hadn't known that. I told clients to read every document before signing. She laughed bitterly. Then I fell in love and stopped reading. I said nothing. Do you know what humiliation does, Emma? No. It makes silence feel safer than truth. Before we hung up, Patricia said, if your mother hasn't signed everything he wants yet, there's still time. She won't listen to me. Then don't make her listen. What am I supposed to do? Wait for Robert to get impatient. At first, I hated that advice. Then I realized Susan had said almost the same thing. For another week, nothing happened. Then Mom called me one afternoon. For the first time in weeks. Do you know where the spare key to the filing cabinet is? I froze. Why? Just asking. What filing cabinet? Robert's. Mom. Never mind. Why are you looking in his filing cabinet? I'm not. She hung up. That was the first sign. Mom had started questioning things herself. I didn't call back. It nearly killed me. 2 days later, she texted. Do you remember Dad's Vanguard account number? I answered. Last 4 digits were 4,817. Why? No response. The following day. Can an investment account be moved without closing the old one? I replied. Sometimes. Depends on the account. Want me to come over? She answered. No. I respected that. Then, Thursday night at 11:17, my phone rang. Mom. I answered immediately. Mom? Silence. Mom? I heard her breathing. Then, Emma. Her voice was shaking. I think you were right. I stood up. Where's Robert? Chicago. Are you safe? Yes. What happened? I found something. What? Papers. What kind? I don't know. She started crying. Mom, listen to me. I'm listening. Don't sign anything. I won't. Don't confront him. Okay. Do you want me to come? A long pause. Then, yes. I was in my car 5 minutes later. When I arrived, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table. The same kitchen where Robert had warned me. A thick folder lay open in front of her. She looked older than she had 3 weeks earlier. I sat down. What did you find? She pushed the folder toward me. Draft estate documents. Transfer forms. Trust paperwork. I read slowly. Then again. Some documents would have transferred significant investment assets into structures giving Robert broad management authority. Others changed beneficiaries. One draft gave Robert decision-making authority under circumstances Mom clearly didn't understand. Did you sign these? No. Any versions of these? I don't know. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? I've signed so many things. Okay. I kept my voice calm. We'll figure it out. Then Mom pulled out another page. A list. Every major asset she owned. The house. Dad's investment account. Retirement. Insurance proceeds. Cash accounts. Beside each was an estimated value. At the bottom, approximate consolidated assets. $1.80. 2. M. Mom pointed. Look at the date. I did. 3 weeks before the wedding. Robert had calculated her approximate net worth before marrying her. He said he never cared about my money. I didn't answer. Then she pulled out one final sheet. Carol's Facebook post. The gala announcement. Mom's photograph. Robert had printed it. Before the gala. Before the pen. Before the chance meeting. Mom covered her mouth. He knew. I took her hand. He knew who I was. Yes. He knew Dad was dead. Probably. He knew I had money. I couldn't lie. Yes. She started crying. Not loudly. That somehow made it worse. The pen. Mom. I told everyone that story. I know. I thought it was fate. I moved closer. She let me put my arm around her. After several minutes, she whispered. I wanted you to be wrong. I know. I went into his desk because I wanted to prove you wrong. She gave a broken laugh. I was going to call you tomorrow. For what? To demand an apology. I smiled slightly. You still can. She looked at me. For half a second, she almost laughed. Then she started crying again. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. Don't. She pulled away. Please don't say that just because you're my daughter. I'm not. I sold my car because he said we didn't need to. You can buy another car. I stopped seeing Carol. You can call her. I gave him passwords. Passwords can be changed. I accused you of wanting your father's money. That one sat between us. Mom looked at me. I'm sorry. I swallowed. I know. No. She shook her head. I need you to hear it. I waited. I'm sorry. I squeezed her hand. Then I asked the only question that mattered. What do you want to do? She stared at the documents. I don't know. That's okay. No. She wiped her face. I do. She looked at me. I want out. The next morning, we met an attorney. Then, an independent financial advisor. The process was less dramatic than movies make these things look. And much more frightening. We had to figure out exactly what Mom had signed. Exactly which accounts Robert could access. Exactly what could be changed without alerting him. We didn't empty accounts. We didn't hide money. We documented. We protected. We followed legal advice. Susan agreed to speak with the attorney. Patricia provided what she was legally permitted to provide. For the first time, Mom heard their stories directly. Susan didn't attack Robert. That helped. She simply told Mom. I loved him too. Mom looked at her. Did he love you? Susan thought for a long time. Maybe. That surprised us. Then she said. But love doesn't excuse control. Patricia was even quieter. She told Mom about the investment. About the shame. Then. I spent years wondering whether he planned everything from the beginning. Mom asked. Did he? Patricia shook her head. I don't know. Mom looked disappointed. Patricia continued. And eventually I realized I didn't need to know. What do you mean? I knew what he did after I trusted him. That was enough. That sentence changed something in Mom. Until then, she had been obsessed with one question. Did Robert ever love me? But there was no document that could answer that. No bank record. No email. No former wife. Maybe Robert had targeted Mom for money and later developed real feelings. Maybe every moment had been calculated. Maybe the truth lived somewhere between those two possibilities. Mom would never know. And that uncertainty was part of what Robert had taken from her. 4 days later, he returned from Chicago. Mom insisted on confronting him herself. I can stay. No. Mom. This is my marriage. So I waited in my car 2 blocks away. 23 minutes later, she called. Come in. When I entered, Robert was standing in the living room. His suitcase remained beside the door. His face was red. What did you tell her? Nothing you didn't already show her. Get out. Mom stood. No. Robert turned. Helen. No. She stays. His anger vanished almost instantly. Helen, please. His voice softened. You're overwhelmed. I'm not. Emma has frightened you. No. She's been against me from the beginning. Mom shook her head. I found the documents. Robert stopped. The trust. Helen, those were drafts. The account list. I was planning our future. The Facebook post. Silence. Mom held it up. You knew who I was. Robert Sahil. I'd seen you online. Before the gala. Yes. You knew I was a widow. I knew Daniel had passed. You knew I was financially secure. Helen. Did you? He looked at me. Then back at her. I knew you were comfortable. Mom's eyes filled. And then you bought the ticket. I wanted to meet you. The pen? Robert rubbed his forehead. I needed an excuse to start a conversation. Mom stared. So that was planned. I saw a beautiful woman and wanted to meet her. That's not an answer. Yes. The word landed heavily. Yes, I planned to talk to you. Mom closed her eyes. Robert stepped toward her. But everything after that was real. Was it? Of course. You knew how much I had before we married. We were engaged. You knew more about my finances than I knew about your marriages. Helen, did you love me? I love you. That's not what I asked. Robert's frustration returned. What do you want me to say? The truth. The truth is I saw you, learned about you, wanted to meet you, and then fell in love with you. Mom looked at the documents. And somewhere in there you calculated my net worth. I'm a financial person. No. Emma is a financial person. For the first time, I almost smiled. Mom continued. You were planning to move my money. For us? Without explaining it. I explained everything. No. Mom shook her head. You talked until I stopped asking questions. Robert stared at her. That sentence hurt him because it was true. He tried another approach. Think about our marriage. I am. Charleston. Mom's face moved. The garden beds. She looked away. The nights we stayed up talking. Stop. Those were real. I don't know that anymore. Robert stepped closer. They were. Mom looked at him. Maybe. That answer surprised him. She continued. Maybe you did love me. He softened. I do. But I'll never know where love ended and the money began. Helen? And I can't live like that. His face hardened. This is Emma. No. She has been trying to destroy us for months. No. She investigated me. Because you gave her a reason. She contacted my ex-wives. Because you never told me they existed. She wants your father's money protected for herself. Mom's expression changed. Months earlier, that accusation had worked. Not now. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said. I said that to her. Robert said nothing. I accused my daughter of wanting her father's money. Helen, I never. Yes, you did. No. I asked questions. You planted the idea. He became angry again. You are responsible for your own words. Mom nodded. You're right. That stopped him. I am. She took a breath. I was wrong to say it. Then she looked at me. And I apologized. She turned back to Robert. But you still planted it. Robert grabbed his suitcase. This is insane. Mom didn't move. Maybe. You're throwing away a marriage because of paperwork. No. She shook her head. I'm ending a marriage because I no longer trust the man I'm married to. He looked at me. This is what you wanted. I didn't answer. Mon dit. No, Robert. He turned. For weeks, I thought Emma was turning me against you. Her voice shook. But she didn't. She held the folder against her chest. You did that yourself. Robert left. The divorce took months. There was no dramatic arrest. No magical courtroom scene. No moment when a judge declared Mom completely right and Robert completely wrong. Real life is messier. Some of the documents Mom had signed were valid. Some financial changes had been made with her consent. Some money was difficult to separate. Lawyers argued. Records were reviewed. Robert insisted he'd acted in good faith. Mom's attorney disagreed with several of his actions. Eventually, they reached a settlement. Mom didn't recover every dollar, but she kept the overwhelming majority of what Dad had left her. More importantly, she regained control of her own life. There was one final surprise. About 2 months into the divorce, Mom received a letter. From Robert. She didn't open it for 3 days. Then she called me. Should I read it? Do you want to? I don't know. You don't have to. What if he apologizes? Would it change anything? She thought. No. What if he doesn't? That would hurt. Then maybe the letter doesn't get to decide how you heal. She was quiet. Since when did you get wise? 36 years of dealing with you. She laughed. Eventually, Mom read the letter. Robert apologized for lying about his previous marriages. He insisted his feelings for her had been genuine. He said he had researched her before the gala because he'd been attracted to her photograph. He said the financial planning was meant to benefit both of them. He said Emma had misunderstood him. Even in an apology, he couldn't stop blaming someone else. Mom folded the letter. Do you believe him? I asked. She thought. Some of it. That surprised me. Which part? That he loved me. I waited. She continued. I think he did. Does that make it harder? No. She looked at the letter. It makes it clearer. How? I used to think if someone loved you, that meant they couldn't also hurt you. She shook her head. That's not true. I said nothing. Maybe Robert loved me in the only way he knew how. She put the letter down. But his way of loving me required me to become smaller. That was the last time she read it. 6 months after Robert left, Mom sold the house. Not because Robert owned it. Not because she needed money. Because she didn't want to spend another year walking through rooms filled with questions. She bought a small cottage 15 minutes from me. 2 bedrooms. Big windows. Tiny kitchen. A backyard that immediately became dangerous in the hands of a woman who loved plants. The first weekend, we went shopping for furniture. Mom spent 40 minutes choosing a sofa. Then she suddenly started laughing. What? I don't have to ask anyone. About the sofa? About anything. She laughed harder. Then cried. Right there in the furniture store. I hugged her between 2 display couches while a salesman pretended not to notice. Mom bought the sofa. Bright yellow. I hated it. She loved it. That was enough. Carol came back. Their first lunch lasted 4 hours. Mom apologized. Carol cried. Then Carol told her. If you ever disappear for a man again, I'm breaking into your house. Mom laughed. Emma already does that. Book club returned too. Mom bought another Honda. She insisted on setting up the online banking herself. The first time she forgot her password, she called me. Don't laugh. I'm definitely going to laugh. Emma. Did you write it down? Yes. Where? Silence. Mom? I forgot. We laughed until she cried. Not every day was easy. Sometimes Mom missed Robert. She admitted that. At first, she felt guilty. How can I miss someone who did that? Because you didn't marry the documents. She looked at me. You married the man you thought he was. Some memories were still good. Charleston had been real. The garden beds were real. The laughter was real. That was another difficult lesson. A relationship doesn't have to be entirely fake to be unhealthy. Someone can give you beautiful memories and still be wrong for your life. Susan visited once. She and Mom had coffee on the porch. I expected them to spend hours talking about Robert. They barely mentioned him. They talked about gardening. Books? Susan's grandchildren. At one point, Mom asked, "Do you ever think about him?" Susan shrugged. Sometimes. Do you hate him? No. Mom looked surprised. Susan smiled. Hating him would still give him too much space. After Susan left, Mom repeated that sentence. Too much space. Then she looked around her cottage. I like my space. About a year after the gala that had changed everything, I visited Mom on a Saturday. She was kneeling beside a flower bed. You know you're 63, right? She looked up. You know you're annoying, right? Genetic. She smiled. I sat on the porch. A few minutes later, she joined me with 2 glasses of iced tea. We watched the sprinklers move across the grass. Then Mom said, "Do you know what the hardest part was? The divorce? No. The money? No. Admitting I was right?" She gave me a look. Definitely not. I laughed. Then she became serious. The hardest part was admitting that I wanted to be loved so badly. I stopped asking whether I was being respected. I looked at her. Wanting to be loved wasn't your mistake. She nodded slowly. No. Then she looked at her little cottage. But staying after I knew the truth would have been. We sat quietly. I thought about Dad. Robert. Susan. Patricia. The Honda. The passwords. The bank statements. The cancelled lunches. None of those things had looked dramatic by themselves. That's what I'd learned. Control doesn't always enter your life shouting. Sometimes it arrives, carrying flowers. Sometimes it offers to drive. To pay the bills. To remember the passwords. To handle the investments. To make your life easier. One responsibility disappears. Then another. Then another. Until one day you realize the person who promised to make your life easier has quietly made it difficult to live without them. But this isn't the story of how I saved my mother. Because I didn't. I found information. Susan shared her experience. Patricia finally broke her silence. A lawyer explained Mom's options. But Helen made the decision. She chose to look at the evidence. She chose to admit she'd been wrong. She chose to leave. And at 63, she chose to begin again. My mother still believes in love. I'm glad. Robert didn't get to take that from her. But now, whenever one of her friends tells her she's met someone new, Mom doesn't ask the question she used to ask. She doesn't say, "Does he make you happy?" Instead, she asks, "Do you still feel like yourself when you're with him?" I think that's a much better question. If you were in my place, would you have kept investigating after your own mother asked you to stop? Or would you have stepped away and waited for her to discover the truth herself? Tell me what you think in the comments. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to Hidden Stories for more emotional stories about family, betrayal, difficult choices, and second chances. Sometimes the people we love don't need us to make their decisions for them. They just need us to remain close enough that when they're finally ready to choose themselves, they don't have to stand alone. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.